UFC Fight Night, Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, as usual, fight by fight breakdowns and predictions. From that betting perspective specifically, we want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video, on this prediction video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this fight night, it's a busy card, 14 fights overall. And this is taking place in front of a live audience in Kansas City, Missouri. So that audience will potentially be a factor in some of these fights. But with such a busy card, we want to get started right away with fight number one on our prelims. And we're looking at Joselyne Edwards versus Lucie Pudilová. For Joselyne Edwards, 2-fight winning streak after that split decision win versus Ji Young Kim back in July. Starting to come into her own a little bit. I do like the improvements that I'm seeing from her. She is a patient striker. Her technique looks improved. Her activity looks improved as well. Look for her to continue to come forward. Good distance control, though, but sort of giving you that consistent pressure forward. Good leg kicks, good combinations. They look cleaner as she's starting to get better. A bit slow on the feet. She can also be outworked. She can be out-pressured. So that is going to be something that we're going to have to see if Lucie Pudilová returns with that. And also with Joselyne Edwards, more of a striker than anything else, although she does have the ability to be competitive in clinch situations. She does have some IQ there, and she has that physical strength to hang in those positions, but primarily a striker. For Lucie Pudilová, pretty much the same thing, right? 3-fight winning streak. She beat Yanan Wu back in August. She's pretty much a striker as well. She has a decent long jab that she uses regularly. She has a decent 1-2 combination, decent level of pace and activity. The striking is there. The consistency is there in her striking as well. What's interesting is that, yes, she has primarily been a striker throughout her career, but in her last fight, she was looking for takedowns. She landed a few. She had good top control. She even finished the fight via ground and pound. So that may be an added layer to her game, despite the discouraging takedown numbers. Look out for something like that. Anything can happen in this fight. I think that's going to be the theme of this card. There's a lot of close fights here. I think there's no clear advantage that one fighter has over the other in this fight. If anything, again, it is that added layer of the ground game that Pudilová seems to now have, at least when you watch her last fight. Especially in that Joselyne Edwards doesn't really have the best takedown defense. But I am going to start things off here with the underdog. I am looking at Joselyne Edwards here. I think Pudilova's striking, it may get more respect on paper, but Joselyne Edwards has those kicks to keep her at distance. She has that diverse striking approach to have moments on the feet in her own right, and maybe to even be more effective on the feet throughout the fight. I also think that Joselyne Edwards has learned from her 2 fights. I'm thinking about the Jessica Rose Clark fight. I'm thinking about the Karahosa fight. She gave up a combined 9 takedowns in those 2 fights. It's 2 years later at this point. She's 27 years old now. She's in her 6th UFC fight. She has good physical strength for the division. And to me, all of that means that I don't really anticipate Lucie Pudilová, landing takedowns, at will. It hasn't been a part of her game, and although it was part of her game in her last fight, I can't come out thinking that she's all of a sudden going to be a huge wrestling threat. At least the way that Karahosa or the way that Jessica Rose Clark was able to land takedown after takedown on Edwards. If you're on the betting side of Pudilová, you're ultimately going to rely on her striking. You're going to rely on that added ground game. You're going to rely on her consistent cardio. But it's women's MMA. Anything can happen. And again, my almost a gut pick in some ways. But I'm going with Joselyne Edwards. I think there's something there with the toughness that's going to pull her over, especially in front of a live audience. So Joselyne Edwards is going to be my pick, an underdog to get us started.
Yeah, this is a hard fight to start the card with, man. We got two fighters that aren't the best, aren't the greatest fighters, that have holes in their games. They have lost in the UFC multiple times. And when you look at Edwards, she's definitely improving in the striking area. That's definitely her strong suit. But she's actually improved to the point that she's one of the better strikers now in that division. But again, this is an MMA match, and we know that Pudilová, now she's working with SBG. Great improvements in her last fight. She went to her grappling. She showed really good jujitsu, was able to get I believe she got a submission in that fight. I'm sorry, elbows, and got the fight finished. Really good ground and pound. But yeah, she looked really good. Her boxing was on point as well. She had a really good jab in that fight. In this fight, she's going to need to get that takedown, though. I think on the feet, Edwards is going to be a little too dynamic. She's going to be too active, more activity on the Edwards side. She throws like 100+ strikes a fight. So she's able to definitely put on the activity. And I think she has a higher rate than Pudilová. But if she can get this to the mat over the first round, second round, third round, it could be an easy win for Pudilová because Edwards has shown that she can be taken down. But again, her last fight, Edwards, she's shown good takedown defense against, I'm sorry, the fight before that against Ramona Pascual. Pascual is not the greatest, but Pascual went for takedowns. She looked good stuff in those takedowns, pushing the head down when she's against the cage, getting out of that position, staying on her feet. Right, so that definitely tells me she's working on her takedown defense. Close fight can go either way. I'm going to roll with Edwards as well. I think she's just more of an athlete. It could help her in this fight, keep it on the feet, and do a lot of work in the striking. So I think she's going to win with her striking. Could go 3 rounds, but likely goes 3 rounds. But I do have Edwards pulling this one out.
Second fight of our prelims, Aaron Phillips versus Gaston Bolaños. For Aaron Phillips, he hasn't fought since July 2020. Hasn't even been booked for a fight since October 2021. So right away, that's going to tell you we don't know exactly what we're going to see here from him. This is a fighter that was 0-3 in the UFC. The last time we seen him, he was introduced as a Thai kickboxer, so expect that stylistically. Again, from the last time we've seen him, good movement, good overall striking. The kicks are there. Really likes that head kick specifically. Doesn't really have a sense of direction in his offense. He fights from the outside, but he doesn't necessarily commit to any kind of game plan or any kind of offense. I mean, ultimately, let's see what he looks like 3 years later at 33 years old. I don't think there's much else that I can really discuss about Aaron Phillips. For Gaston Bolaños is making his UFC debut coming from Bellator. He was 6-3 in Bellator, so not amazing. But his wins look pretty good. All 6 of his wins are via KO, TKO. He has very patient forward pressure. He's a switch stance fighter. He's going to look for a lot of fakes and feints. He's going to try to get his opponents to bite. Really effective calf kick strategy. Good pop on his punches as well. Good IQ, good combinations. Haven't really been able to find as much recent footage as I would like for Gaston Bolaños. So for me personally, there are some question marks. But I can say that we are looking at a fighter that, it's a pretty good overall striker with a lot of power. I think that's a pretty fair assessment to have for Gaston Bolaños. Bolaños coming down in weight here as well. He normally competes at 145. This one, you're going to expect him to have the power advantage in this one as a result. Both of these guys are kickboxers, so both of them are going to be comfortable on the feet. And I mean, I think that to some degree, you have to think Bolaños is a smarter pick here. I would say from a betting perspective, just completely stay away. Way too many variables. We have a debut on the side of Bolaños. We have a 3-year layoff on the side of Aaron Phillips. You cannot be confident with your money in either of those situations. But I think that Bolaños' striking style is going to allow him to be the aggressor. It's going to allow him to dictate the pace, going to allow him to close distance. And again, from who Aaron Phillips was, there's nothing particularly special that he offers with his striking, other than it sort of looking good. I believe that Bolaños' power is going to translate to this division. I think he may hurt Phillips, potentially end the fight early. Again, I would not bet on this one, but I will be picking Gaston Bolaños to get the victory to get the job done.
Yeah, a lot of questions on both sides, man. Aaron Phillips been out of the cage. When he was in the cage, he wasn't really fighting the best guys, or he wasn't winning against the best guys. He does have a fight against Chris Gutierrez. He lost. He lost to Jack Shore, lost to Sam Cecilia. So he does have some fights, but he does lose those fights. He's not that good. In this fight, though, he's going to be the better grappler. It would make sense for him to go to the grappling in this fight because Bolaños is a kickboxer. He was a kickboxer before the MMA thing. So this guy's going to be the better striker. And Bolaños is going to be hard to take down because Phillips doesn't have the best doesn't have the best takedowns. And Bolaños is going to be able to have the lower center of gravity, keep it on the feet. He has a really good spinning elbow that he lands in almost every one of his fights, or he definitely goes for it. He has a really good setup with that elbow. I think he's going to land that on Saturday. But if he doesn't, I see him winning a striking battle. The better striker, landing the leg kicks, keeping on the feet. And yeah, I could see him knocking out Phillips at some point in the fight. So I'm going to go with Gaston as well to get the win.
Third fight, let's look at Bruna Brasil versus Denise Gomes. For Bruna Brasil, it's her debut. She's coming from the Dana White Contender Series, very comfortable on the feet. Keeps her hands down, is how comfortable she is. Very methodical. She can be explosive. She can be dynamic. The kicks are there. She is going to use her kicks to fight from distance pretty effectively. Has a nasty high kick to go along with it. And she can work the ground. She has solid top control, solid grappling from what I've seen. And she can land the takedowns. Of course, the stat there is not going to be too telling because it's a very small sample size. But seeing a number there for her takedown average, it tells you that she has that ability. Denise Gomes had a unanimous decision loss to Loma Lubunmi back in September. She's also comfortable on the feet. She has solid hands, solid striking as well. With her, it's a little bit more about the pressure and the pace. She's usually the aggressor in her fights. She's the shorter fighter. She's going to look to close that range. She's going to look to be aggressive. Expect her to keep it on the feet, very much a striker. And I'm anticipating a close fight between two strikers in this fight. I like Bruna Brasil's striking more. However, I think her striking is more effective. I think more importantly than that, I think her height advantage, her reach advantage will be important factors in this fight. She's going to have 4 inches in height and another 2.5 inches in reach. Plus, on top of that, again, her kicks. That's primarily her offense. So that's going to give her extra sort of distance control of range. And also, I'm looking at the side of Denise Gomes. She showed us poor takedown defense up until this point. And I think that will allow Bruna Brasil to be able to land the takedown, to be able to use her ground game to her advantage. If for whatever reason, Denise Gomes is being more effective with the striking. So I'm looking at Bruna Brasil ultimately being better everywhere here. Got to be careful. It is a relatively low level fight, so anything can happen. But analytically, I'm liking Brazil's striking more. I'm liking Brazil's takedowns more. I'm liking her ground game more. Denise Gomes does not have the best takedown defense. And all of that is adding up to me sort of comfortably picking Bruna Brasil, but in no way, shape, or form am I comfortable enough to put money on this. So I will flag that for anyone listening. But in terms of making a pick, I like Bruna Brasil.
Okay, when you look at Bruna Brasil, man, she looks good. The eye test says she has potential to be something special in the women's division in the UFC. She good stand up. I seen a judo throw from her. I seen some good grappling. I seen her going for submissions. I seen her getting out of submissions. She seems very well rounded. She's gonna be the bigger girl, taller girl in this fight. It's gonna be her first fight in the UFC, so that could be an issue as well. She did fight on the Contender Series. Nice head kick, but who she was fighting looked like they shouldn't have been in the ring with her. They looked much smaller, so she had an easy match to get to the UFC. When you look at Denise Gomes, I think Denise Gomes is tough, man. I think having that first fight out of the way is going to definitely help her in this fight. She had a first fight against Loma Lookboonmee. That's not an easy fight to debut on. But yeah, she went in there. She dealt with a really good kickboxer, had some good moments. Her IQ wasn't the greatest in certain spots in that fight. For example, first round, she went for a takedown and ended up on the bottom. She got reversed, and then she got out of it. And then she actually got on top of Loma. And instead of just trying to steal the round back with ground and pound for the last minute, which could have stole the round, she went for submissions, and she eventually got she wasn't able to get anything done there. She wasn't able to get any damage, and she pretty much lost that round because of what Loma did prior. So I don't think her IQ is the greatest. But one thing in this fight I do like about her is her boxing. I like her forward pressure. I like that she's ready to go to war. She's gonna fight for your money if you do pick her. Bruna Brazil has the better kicks, but I think Denise has the better boxing, and I think Denise is gonna do what she can to march her down, keep the fight close distance. Close distance, I think Denise is dangerous. I think she's gonna be throwing the harder shots. And if you watch Denise's fight on the Contender Series, she fought a pretty experienced fighter in a Rayan Dos Santos, and Rayan won the first round. But as the fight went on, Rayan couldn't really hurt Gomes with her punching power, and Gomes was at that point just walking through like Terminator and was landing her shots because she was not concerned with what was coming back. I don't think Brazil has that much pop in her hands. She does have pop in her kicks. I'm going to go with the underdog in this spot. I'm going to go with Denise Gomes. Pressure in Brazil, getting in that phone booth range and landing some big shots, man. So I'm going to go with the underdog, Denise Gomes.
Fight number 4, Lando Vannata versus Daniel Zellhuber. For Lando Vannata, submission loss to Charles Jourdain. That was just around a year ago. Smooth switch stance type of style on the feet, good rhythm, good timing. We know he's very light on the feet. We know he implements a pretty effective calf kick strategy. Throws one shot at a time. That is one criticism that I have about him. You know, his combinations could be a little bit better, but his hands are fairly quick. You know, he keeps his hands down because he has good reaction time, good counter punching ability, a lot of fakes and feints to keep his opponents guessing as well. Can't really sleep on his takedowns. I know the number is not crazy. You know, only 1.2 takedowns per fight, not a specialist by any means, but it is something that he can resort to. We see the accuracy is almost as high as 50% there. So, you know, don't sleep on that. Look for that to be included in his game as well. He does slow down a bit as the fight goes on. What's interesting to note is that, I mean, the last time we spoke about him, he was taking a crack at 145 and then, of course, lost to Charles Jourdain. He's right back at 155 pounds for this one. So maybe it's just better on his body. Maybe that's better signs for his cardio, but definitely something that we're going to have to take a look at as this fight goes on. For Daniel Zellhuber, on the other hand, he had a unanimous decision loss to Trey Ogden. That was back in September. Tall for the division, very long for the division. He's going to have, 4 inches in height, about 6 inches in reach as well. Solid Muay Thai, fights from range with that longer reach that he has. The striking overall is solid. He has a good long jab. He has good combinations, good striking technique as well. Good chin, very patient, almost too patient, like we saw in his debut, allowing Trey Ogden to outstrike him ultimately. And he has good power. 7 of his 12 wins are via KO, TKO. I have seen him land takedowns, but not really a go-to part of his game. And he's still fairly young. So this is a fighter that we can see get better every time we see him step into the octagon. I do think there's good value on Lando Vannata here as the underdog. Zellhuber's last fight for me was telling. You got to assume that he learns from it. We talk about it all the time with debuts and fighters looking better in their second fight. As the better striker in his debut versus Trey Ogden, he allowed himself to be outstruck in that match. As I mentioned earlier, he wasn't able to get going. He wasn't able to recognize that he needed to do more offensively until it was already too late. And even then, he never really went for broke in that fight. And now you put him up against a much craftier striker in Lando Vannata, who is still just 31 years old, who has seen much stiffer competition and who is a much higher level of competition than anyone that Zellhuber has taken on. Don't be surprised if Lando shows that there's levels in this fight. We know that Zellhuber will be the bigger fighter, good power. Lando going back up to 155 pounds, where he was never really the biggest. Tried out a stint at 145 that didn't work. So Zellhuber will be the bigger fighter, probably the bigger power threat, and you want to be worried about that. But again, I think Lando Vannata needs the win at this point. I think it's just a one loss in a row now at this point. But he's looking at a winnable fight. He's looking at a drop in competition. What has ultimately shaped up to be a mediocre UFC career at this point. I think he needs wins, and I think he needs them where he can get them. And I think Daniel Zellhuber is a spot where he can get it, being a craftier striker, being a higher level striker who has been in there against higher level competition. I think if we saw Zellhuber's second fight also against a non-striker, I think it could have been a great opportunity to say, yeah, Daniel Zellhuber learns from his mistakes, has a much better performance this time around. But when you put him in there against someone who can be as crafty as Lando Vannata, that could spell disaster. So I'm going to go with Lando Vannata. I think he has some value as an underdog. And again, with Zellhuber, maybe he just doesn't figure it out the way that happened in his debut. So Lando Vannata is going to be my pick. Of course, dangerous fight either way, but I think there's some value on the underdog Lando Vannata.
Yeah, I'm gonna trust Zellhuber, man. I think he comes back. His first fight, he was not ready for the fight under the bright lights. He was not throwing any shots. He definitely wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared. Um, yeah, the UFC, the big lights definitely affected him. He was nervous in that fight. I think he's gonna get over the hump here, man. He's only 23, taller guy. I really like his striking. I think when you watch his fights outside of the UFC, even on the Contender Series, yeah, let's talk about the Contender Series. He put out a killer, and what was that guy's name? The guy that beat Trezano, I believe it was Trezano. But it was a really good win he had on the Contenders. It was against Lucas Almeida, and that Almeida guy's a killer, man. And he put him he beat him bad in that fight. He had a clear win in that fight on the Contender Series, and his cardio showed up for the whole fight. In this fight, he's gonna have the reach advantage. I think most of this fight's gonna be on the feet. Vannata does have the takedowns, the advantage there. He can definitely go the wrestling route. We haven't really seen him do that for 3 rounds. I can see him go for a takedown at some point to mix it up, but I think the majority of this stays on the feet. And on the feet, I think Daniel's gonna look good here. So I'm gonna go Zellhuber here to get back in the win column here against Vannata.
Fight number 5 of our prelims. Let's look at Gillian Robertson versus Piera Rodriguez. Gillian Robertson submission victory over Maria Agapova back in September. For what it's worth, she also has a grappling match win over Rose Namajunas. That was back in December, so staying pretty active. She's making improvements to her striking. I would still consider her to be a below average striker. Her past few fights, she has been the fighter coming forward. She has been trying to strike first more often. She has been trying to be the aggressor. Still a bit hittable. She still rushes in where her technique could be better. She still forces the action a little bit. But she's more effective in that, she uses that approach to ultimately look for the takedown. She's going to look for chain wrestling opportunities. She's going to pull guard if she has to. She has been effective at getting fights to the ground throughout her UFC career. You look at the numbers there, over 2.5 takedowns per fight, 41% accuracy. So that tells you she has been effective in that approach, in a higher weight class at that, because now she's coming down to 115 pounds for this fight. And we got to recognize that she's a high-level grappler. I mean, I just mentioned she beat Thug Rose in a grappling match in December. Good top control, good submissions, good setups. She's a BJJ black belt, someone that you want to be very careful against when she has you on the ground. Piera Rodriguez, on the other hand, had a unanimous decision win over Sam Hughes to remain undefeated. That was back in October. She's introduced as a striker, looks very comfortable on the feet. Not really the highest pace, but she does pick her shots well. good constant pressure, good usage of her jab, good timing as well. Pretty methodical in her attack. So the combinations are there when they need to be. But again, she's more so picking her shots. Above all, that striking IQ is what seems to stand out for her. 5 of her 9 wins are via KO TKO. She has good power, but I wouldn't really say it's translated to the UFC yet. The takedowns are there as well. She's landed a total of 11 takedowns in her 2 UFC fights plus her Dana White Contender Series fight. So in those 3 fights, 11 total takedowns. She's been taken down only twice by comparison. So the takedown defense is definitely there. She does slow down a bit, so we're gonna have to watch out for that. But it hasn't really been an issue for her so far. I would say she, definitely has at least 2 rounds of solid cardio, and she's not someone that's going to completely gas out, though she will slow down a little bit. I mentioned Gillian Robertson is coming down in weight here. I think that's important to note. The key question mark in this fight is, will Piera Rodriguez's takedown defense and her ability to stay out of grappling exchanges with Robertson, will that prevail? Or will Gillian Robertson be able to implement her style? Of course, I think more importantly, with this being women's MMA, that question mark is a coin toss in a lot of ways, right? Rodriguez's takedown defense, it looks good. Her ground IQ, it looks good, but she allowed Kay Hansen to get a legitimate submission attempt on her, right? Robertson, being the bigger girl, being the more advanced grappler compared to a Kay Hansen, that tells you that she may find opportunities of her own. But ultimately, I'm going to trust Piera Rodriguez to be able to keep it on the feet. I think that she will be ready for Gillian's strategy. I think that she's well versed enough on the ground to keep herself safe. And I think she's better on the feet. And I think there's a big discrepancy on the feet. And at the end of the day, each round has to start on the feet. So I'm looking for Piera Rodriguez to look good here to thwart off most of those takedown attempts from Gillian Robertson, and to really show her advantages on the feet. Robertson coming down in weight is a big threat because her strength could come through in this division. But ultimately, I'm going to trust Piera Rodriguez to stay out of that danger. So Piera Rodriguez is going to be my pick. Another underdog. I think she gets it done.
Yeah, we got a striker versus grappler. We got Gillian Robertson, 11-7. I'm not that high on her grappling. Okay, so she is a grappler. She does get wins, but she's only really looking dominant in these grappling with fighters that aren't that good in grappling. Against fighters that can grapple, it's not the same thing. It's not even close. And in those fights, the fights in her zone, in that area, but it's like she's not better than these guys. So she's good, but she's from Canada, right? So like it's a different level, right? When she fought Brazilians like Talia Santos, okay, she's a killer though. But when she also fought Mayra Bueno Silva, both of them like schooled her with the grappling. And those are high level black belts, Brazilian black belts. So it's a different level, right? And in this fight, she doesn't have good takedowns. She's gonna have a hard. It's gonna be hard for her to take down her opponent in this fight. She doesn't have the best entries. She's not going to be the stronger girl in this fight. So I don't see how she gets it to the mat unless it's some type of trip. But if she does get the back, she is effective on the back. And that's a really dominant position for her. But Piera Rodriguez, she shows that she has really good IQ early on in her career. Against Sam Hughes, she was doing what she needed to do to keep it on the feet. She knew she had the advantage there. And she wasn't trying to make an exciting fight. She was just trying to leave with a win. And it was not an exciting fight. She kept it on the feet. She was able to outstrike Sam Hughes. Boring fight, but she got the win. And I think she's going to do the same thing here. Keep this fight on the feet with her takedowns. I even takedown defense. I even think she can get some takedowns. Again, she's going to be the stronger girl here physically. So Gillian's going to have a hard time in the clinches. And I think she's just going to break up the clinches and get back to striking. And there she's going to put out a lot of work on Gillian. So I think Gillian's going to lose, man. I don't understand how she's a favorite. I guess because she's a vet and she just submitted Rose Namajunas. But again, that's an American black belt. It's a different level, man. And I think Piera is going to have enough to keep it on the feet and beat her striking. So Piera is my pick here to get the win.
Fight number 6. Let's talk about Zak Cummings versus Ed Herman. Don't really know why this fight is scheduled, but we'll talk about it anyway. Zak Cummings, almost 3 years since his last fight. He beat Alessio Di Chirico back in August 2020. He's a southpaw. He's patient, good setups on the feet, keeps his hands active with fakes and feints. He's going to look for that consistent pressure. Doesn't really throw enough. We see the low striking rate there. We see that lack of activity in his stats, like I mentioned, but he has a good chin. He's never been knocked out in over 30 professional fights, 7 losses amongst that. But again, no knockouts, right? He's never been knocked out. Ed Herman, on the other hand, his last fight fairly recently, August 2021, that was against Alonzo Menefield. Who is Ed Herman at this point in his career? He's inactive for almost 2 years. He's 42 years old. But what we saw from him at 40, I anticipate would be very similar. He has that old school style of fighting, bit of a brawler, still good power, especially with that right hand. He's slow on the feet. He's not really the most technically sound fighter, not really the quickest striker. But he's looking to, get in close and look for those dirty boxing opportunities. He's looking to clinch, make it uncomfortable, out tough you in a lot of ways. He can look for those wrestling opportunities as well, but I wouldn't really call it a threat of his. Cummings didn't really look the biggest when he fought at middleweight. And he was coming up from 170 at that time. Yet we're looking at him again almost 3 years later, coming up to 205. At 38 years old, I'm not anticipating him having some type of body transformation. So I'm not anticipating him looking great physically. I think Herman, if nothing else, has been true to the division for a little while. So that physicality could make a difference in this fight. Ultimately, it's 2 older fighters going at it. I would be compelled to go with Ed Herman on this. If nothing else, I think there's good value on Ed Herman here. I think the fight can go either way in a lot of ways. Herman can be the busier fighter. He can force the action. And nowadays, it seems that's enough to steal rounds in the UFC. Herman has those advantages, and he has the advantages of the takedowns, at least statistically. But I'm actually going to pick Zak Cummings here. I think Cummings, not an exciting fighter by any means, but I think his style is going to allow for a boring decision, similarly to his last fight versus Alessio Di Chirico. I can see Cummings keeping his distance, staying at a danger, getting in, getting out, striking effectively. And, Herman's lack of speed, it's going to make it hard to keep up. So very reluctantly, I'm picking Zak Cummings here, just as being the more effective fighter. But I'm looking at a boring one that I'm not interested in betting on in any way, shape, or form. I don't think there's value on the favorite. I don't think there's value on the dog. Just stay all the way away from this one. But for making a pick, I'm going Zak Cummings.
Yeah, this is a waste. This fight shouldn't be happening. These guys are old, man. At this point, it looks like Zak Cummings, them being in Kansas City for this card. Zak Cummings is from Kansas City. Is from somewhere over there. Let me check. Where is he from? Is he from where they're fighting? Let me see here. Where is this guy from? I'm pretty sure.
Zak Cummings from Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay, and they're in Kansas City. So that's definitely the reason why he's on this card. He might be planning on retiring after this fight at home. So I doubt he wants to come out here and lose in his hometown. And when you look at Zak Cummings, his last fight, he looked good in that fight against Chirico. Was able to knock him down at one point, outstruck him. He looked good. Didn't even need his wrestling in that fight. When I look at Ed Herman in his last fights, he's not looking good at all, man. Like, he's not looking good at all. And I was reading a couple of years. There was a report a couple of years ago where Ed Herman said he's fought like 20 fights at that time in the UFC, and he has nothing to show for it. Like, he must have spent his money, or he was on a low contract. So it seems to me that he's trying to stay above water, man. He's just fighting for the cash. Zak Cummings at least is motivated, fighting in his hometown. This could be his last fight. The fact that he just came out of nowhere is now scheduled to fight after a couple of years off in his hometown. I think he has enough to win this fight. I think he's had the better career. I think he's beaten. I think he's beaten the better guys as well. So I think Zak Cummings is the better fighter than Ed Herman, the younger guy as well, at home. I gotta go Zak Cummings, but like Harris said, betting wise, this fight could be a mess. So you can't really trust either side. Both have holes at this point. Both are old. They might not even last. Their cardio might not even last around on either side. So you don't want to put money on this, but for the channel, I'm going to go with Zak Cummings.
Fight number 7 of our prelims. Let's look at Brandon Royval versus Matheus Nicolau. For Brandon Royval, 2-fight winning streak after he beat Matt Schnell. That was back in May. We know he's a very dynamic striker. He's a southpaw on the feet. He can switch stance as well. Very dynamic combinations, good kicks, good hands, good movement, a lot of in and out. He takes a lot of chances, a lot of fakes and feints, good consistent high level of activity. He's actually introduced as a brawler, so definitely not afraid to exchange. Just 39% takedown defense is something to highlight with him. He is very active off of his back, though. Good jiu-jitsu, good submission defense. Won't quit, won't tap out too early, nothing like that. He's somebody that's just going to make every fight that he's in a difficult fight. Matheus Nicolau is on a 6-fight winning streak. On the other hand, he also beat Matt Schnell. That was back in December. Good patient movement. Look for him to fight at range. Good calf kick, good jab to maintain distance. He's an effective striker and really good at picking his shots. The speed is there. The timing is there. Really good counter puncher. Decent takedowns as well when he does look for them. Only about 1.5 per at 50% accuracy. So that tells you he doesn't really look for them as much as he could, but he has them. And really good takedown defense, which probably won't matter in this fight. High level flyweight fight in general. So that's going to tell you that anything can happen, first and foremost. I think what we're learning in the UFC from a betting perspective is that the higher level the fight, the more anything can happen, regardless of what the odds say. Brandon Royval is going to be the one that is forcing the action, forcing the pace here. Nicolau, not afraid to make it a boring fight. And I'm curious what impact that's going to have on Royval's game plan. On the flip side, it may lure Royval into making a mistake. Just one of Royval's 6 losses via KO TKO, but we have seen him dropped before, and Nicolau has good power. Or Brandon Royval's pace is going to be too much for Nicolau, the way it was for Matt Schnell. Again, it's a high-level fight where both fighters are going to try to implement their respective game plans. So we're going to have to see whose game plan is more successful. I do trust Matheus Nicolau, though. I really like his IQ. I'm impressed with his hand speed, his decision-making, his power. He dropped Dvorak. He dropped Matt Schnell a few times. And I think he can drop Brandon Royval again. He has the IQ advantage. He can take advantage of Brandon Royval's aggressiveness in terms of forcing the action, forcing the pace. And Nicolau also has that ability to resort to takedowns, which could further etch rounds in his favor. So I think Royval is going to look good as usual, but not enough to secure the rounds. I think Nicolau is going to capitalize on his mistakes, capitalize on his aggressiveness, be the more effective striker, the more patient striker, and score in those ground moments. So I like Nicolau here to get it done. But again, high-level fight, anything can happen.
Yeah, this is high level, man. This is a really high level fight, and Nicolau has to be careful because Brandon Royval is a dangerous fighter. He's well rounded. He has good submissions, good grappling. This is gonna be a tough fight, man, for both sides. Royval is gonna have the more diverse striking, the more tools. Well, when you look at Nicolau, he's patient. This guy's a really good counter puncher, and he's knocking down a lot of people in these fights, as Harris highlighted. He has good takedown defense. He can get takedowns as well in this fight. He can get this to the mat, and he does have good grappling. So it's a close fight that can go either way, but I do think Matheus, just being more defensively sound, being the better counter striker, I think he's gonna have the bigger moments in this fight as well. And Royval gets dropped, and let's be real, man. Matheus has a heavy shot. I could see him dropping Royval in this fight, even getting a finish at some point. Again, really smart fighter. If he knows he can get takedowns and he can win the fight that way, even if it's boring, he'll go that route. He's gonna look for the easiest path to win this fight. I like Matheus in this spot. I think he's going to figure it out at some point. He's going to either land a counter, change the fight, or even just win a 3-round striking battle. He may even get a finish at some point. But I do like Matheus Nicolau here to get the win.
All right, let's look at the final fight of our prelims in that case. Bill Algeo versus TJ Brown. Algeo had that split decision loss to Andre Fili back in September. He fights tall. He, has long kicks. Going to have the height advantage in this one, a little bit of a reach advantage as well. Has a leg-heavy attack stylistically, very light on the feet. He's relaxed. He's going to switch stance often. Very fluent in his combinations. Keeps his hands down, right? And that actually costs him at times. Also, just 55% takedown defense, which is very relevant in this fight. He's actually been taken down in all of his fights in the UFC thus far. And cardio could also be a concern for Bill Algeo. He does slow down as the fight goes on, at least in terms of that fluid movement, that quick movement, that constant switch stance, all the things that he's doing early on in his fights. TJ Brown had a good win over Eric Silva back in December. Switch stance fighter as well. Very powerful, very fast, good in and out movement. He likes to come forward and push that pace. Combinations are there as well. But he also has the takedowns. He used to play football, and his takedown numbers, they're showing, right? 3.5 takedowns per fight, over 50% accuracy, over 55% accuracy. Active ground and pound. He has a black belt as well. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense. Cardio has been a concern in the past, but when I'm looking at his last fight, it was a pretty high-paced fight, and his cardio did look good. He was able to keep that pace throughout the entire fight, so maybe it's something that he's improved. I am smelling another upset on for this fight, and I think this is probably the card that I've selected the most underdogs up until this point. I think for TJ Brown, stylistically, you gotta like him because he's gonna force that pace, he's gonna force that pressure. Algeo is going to allow that to happen. I think stylistically, Brown, also likes the takedowns. He likes to go for it. He likes to include it, and Algeo isn't that good at defending them, right? I think what makes Algeo the favorite here is that he can pick apart TJ Brown on the feet with the striking, but I can't really trust that from a fighter who's 3-3 in the UFC, who's 16-7 overall. It's not like he has a Sean Strickland type of record where I can say his striking is just working for him. His striking is not necessarily working for him because 16-7 is not amazing. So I can't trust him to just simply be the better striker here. And instead, I'm looking at TJ Brown to be more aggressive, to implement the wrestling. And I look at TJ Brown's last fight, it was a good win, different type of opponent, but I can actually see him implementing a similar type of style offensively. Again, pushing the pressure on the pace, forcing the takedowns, Algeo allowing those takedowns, and Brown to just, accumulate points and accumulate rounds in his favor through those methods. I think the crowd is also going to be a good thing for TJ Brown. So I like the underdog value that's on him. I think TJ Brown gets it done.
Yeah, this is a this is a tough fight because when you look at Algeo, he's gonna have the way better cardio, and he's gonna be the longer guy. He's very diverse in his striking. He should have the striking advantage over the 3 rounds. As a whole, he should have that advantage, and he has good jiu-jitsu as well. He has some good grappling. As Harris indicated, he's not the best with takedowns, but he is good at getting back up. But yeah, his takedowns, he's not the best at stopping takedowns. That's the problem. But yeah, it's a tough one because with TJ Brown, he does have takedowns. He's a strong guy, but I can't really trust him. He's been dropped 3 times in the UFC. While Algeo has never been dropped ever in the UFC, so Algeo's gonna have the better chin as well. So there's a lot of things going for Algeo in this fight. TJ Brown, though, he does have power. He can definitely hurt Algeo. I think he's going to be the heavier puncher in this fight. Physically stronger in this fight. He should be able to dictate the clinch. He should be able to get to the hips, get to the legs, block the hands, get some takedowns. And what's good about his takedowns is when he gets the takedowns, he's automatically, most of the time, he ends up in your guard. So it's kind of hard to just pop right back up when he's in your guard right away off that takedown. So that could help him in this fight because usually people take Algeo down. He's on his side. He gets back up. He gets back up. He gets to the cage. He gets back up. But if you can get him in, take him down, and get in the guard, it's gonna be harder for him to get back up. And that's one thing going for TJ in this spot. It's a tough fight because I do think TJ Brown has the skills to win. But Algeo, he seems more durable and he has the better cardio. He seems like the more reliable pick. But I'm actually going to roll with Harris on this one with TJ Brown, utilizing some wrestling, getting 2 rounds in. He had a fight against, I know it was Rosa, but he wrestled for 3 rounds. He got like 5 or 6 takedowns. So his cardio is improving, and it should hold up enough to just kind of lay for 2 rounds. 3rd round's going to go to Algeo no matter what. So I think TJ needs to get those first 2 rounds, and I think he has enough cardio to do that. So I'm going to go with the underdog as well, TJ Brown.
All right, main card time. Let's talk about it. 6 fights overall. Fight number 1, Clay Guida versus Rafa Garcia. Clay Guida had that split decision win over Scott Holtzman back in December. His style is not going to change much at this point. 41 years old. We know he's tough on the feet. We know he's going to give you a lot of movement, a high pace, willing to engage, willing to brawl. Ultimately, going to look for that takedown at some point, over 3 takedowns per fight. And also a cardio machine, right? So with Clay Guida, right to the point, you know what you're getting from him. Rafa Garcia, on the other hand, beat Mahashate back in December. Good stand-up. The movement is decent. Good reaction time. Good counter punching. Gonna fight effectively from range. Good fakes and feints as well. Good level changes included in his style because he also has takedowns. Back to his striking for a moment. The combinations are really good, and he's very comfortable on the feet. He is physically strong. He can hold you against the cage. I mentioned he can land takedowns as well, over 4 takedowns per fight, which is very good. Just a good overall ground game, right? 8 of his 15 wins are via submission. So he's very well versed down there. I'll keep the prediction short though. I think Garcia should be good here. I think Garcia is a much smarter pick in this one, regardless of what happens. If you're on the side of Clay Guida, I think you're relying on his cardio in the later stages of the fight, especially knowing that the pace that he pushes. But outside of that, I think Garcia has too many advantages here. I think Garcia is the much better striker. I think Garcia can take advantage of Clay Guida's forced pace and pressure because Garcia is a really good counterpuncher. And Garcia, I'm not going to say historically, but at least in terms of just his right now ability, he has just as much wrestling as Clay Guida does. Probably just as much grappling as well. So I'm not really seeing how Clay Guida wins the rounds while both fighters are relatively fresh. So to me, ultimately, it's going to be a cardio bet. And I trust Rafa Garcia enough to get me 2 rounds before cardio potentially becomes a factor. So Rafa Garcia is my pick. I think he gets it done. And I think it's another loss for the veteran Clay Guida.
Yeah, I'll be quick, man. I like Rafa Garcia as well. He has some good wins in the UFC. Even in his loss against Drakkar Klose, he looked good in that fight. And Drakkar Klose is a legit opponent. Clay Guida's too old now, man. It looks like he's transitioning into grappling. If you notice, since 2021, since 2019, he's been taking a lot of these grappling matches, and he's had 1 sec here. He had 2 or 3 matches in 2022, or 4 matches in 2022. So it looks like he's going that route. It looks like he knows his time's coming to an end here. When he's out of the UFC to make some extra cash, he's likely going to be doing grappling for another couple more years. In this fight, I just don't see where he has the advantage aside from that cardio. But that cardio is still not the same as it was before. His last fight, he was able to push the pace and with the cardio because he was fighting Scott Holtzman, who was not putting on much pace. So kind of Clay Guida was kind of dictating the pace in that fight, even though he was losing at some points and then winning, and then he eventually won the fight. Holtzman was never pressing the pace to kind of slow him down. Garcia will in the first 2 rounds use some wrestling, time up against the cage, and I think on the feet, I think right now Garcia is going to be the more dangerous striker. He might just keep the standing and knock him out. So I'm gonna go Garcia here, man. I just think they're similar fighters, but I got to go with the 28-year-old and the guy that I think right now is going to be able to dictate where the fight goes, and that is Rafa Garcia.
Second fight of our main card, Pedro Munhoz versus Chris Gutierrez. A good bantamweight fight here. Munhoz has not fought since that eye poke no contest that he had versus Sean O'Malley back in July. Solid veteran, sets up his game with a very active calf kick, good stand-up, cuts the ring off pretty well. He's patient. He is willing to start slow to read his opponent, sits on his strikes a little bit. The punches do sort of come one at a time, but good striking defense, good in and out movement on the feet, and likes to keep it on the feet. He's not going to really look for takedowns, right? Just half a takedown per fight, 80% takedown defense as well. So we're looking at two fighters that are going to want to keep it standing, because Chris Gutierrez is very much the same way, 73% takedown defense, and also right around half a takedown per fight. But Chris Gutierrez has an 8-fight unbeaten streak after he knocked out Frankie Edgar in round 1 back in November. We know he's a high-level striker, high striking IQ, picks his spots well, dangerous calf kick approach to his game, probably the best in the UFC at using it. Switch stance very often. He's light on his feet. He's going to use a lot of fakes, good ability as well to control the center of the octagon. And like I said, not really looking for takedowns. So I'm expecting both of these fighters to want to keep it standing. I can see this fight having some similarities to Pedro Munhoz's last fight versus Sean O'Malley. I can also see this fight having some similarities to it that Chris Gutierrez's last fight versus Frankie Edgar. What I mean by both of those examples is that, Gutierrez should have better control of the range, should be fighting from the outside, but being more effective and ultimately catching Munhoz. Now Munhoz is tough, so I don't anticipate Gutierrez knocks him out the way he did Frankie Edgar. But I think Gutierrez can definitely have those moments where he catches Munhoz. Munhoz is gonna, implement that calf kick game, but Gutierrez is the best at that, right? Outside of that, Gutierrez's striking is cleaner, it's quicker, and he's going to have key advantages in height and reach to a point where I think he gets it done. I think Chris Gutierrez is ready for these types of fights. I think Munhoz, while being a tough test, does not present anything that's particularly challenging for Chris Gutierrez. So yes, step up in competition, but I think he passes the test. I think this could be a good win for Chris Gutierrez. And I think this could be, kind of that staple victory if he didn't already, have that against Frankie Edgar. This is going to be that signature victory that really propels him to the upper echelon of the division. So I like Chris Gutierrez to get it done. I think he's just going to be the better striker here.
Yeah, it makes sense for Munhoz to get that grappling going in this fight. Show us that grappling you have. Because on the feet, Munhoz likes to keep it there. He likes to throw those kicks, those calf kicks, but that's the game Gutierrez plays as well. And the difference between the two in that kicking game is the big difference is Gutierrez has better defense when it comes to those kicks. He's able to move out of the way, check them better. And with the hands, I do like Gutierrez's boxing. I like his striking defense as a whole is better. I think he's gonna be able to outstrike Munhoz if this stays striking, and I think that's where the fight's gonna go. So I have to go with Gutierrez. Munhoz, oh man, I'm just not impressed with him lately. Even in his fights, he's not winning them, but he's not really looking that good in these fights either. And so I do like Chris Gutierrez here to be the more dynamic guy, the much better striker. And this is one of my more confident plays, but because they're both good fighters, anything can happen on either side. But I'm pretty comfortable taking Chris Gutierrez here to get the win.
Fight number 3, Tanner Boser versus Yon Cutelaba. Tanner Boser, split decision loss to Rodrigo Nascimento back in September. He's light on his feet. He has good movement, good low kicks that he's going to use as part of his sort of fight from the outside type of strategy. Has good power, especially with that overhand right hook. Going to switch stance as well, and he presents a threat in both stances. When he's a southpaw, he's going to bring a lot of those low kicks. When he's orthodox, he's going to bring that overhand right hand. Good speed while he was a heavyweight. So I think that should translate to at least decent speed as a light heavyweight. And just fair to note, not really a ground threat at all. Has not landed a single takedown in the UFC. Just 64% takedown defense as well. So it's something that his opponents have used against him. That's going to be important to note for Ion Cutelaba, who, yes, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Kennedy and Nzechukwu back in November. But he has that ground game. He can incorporate it when he chooses to do so, and it's something that he has been choosing to do a lot more recent, or a lot more recently. 4.7 takedowns per at this point, so the stat looks very impressive. 57% accuracy on his takedowns as well. He's got a good ground game, good ground and pound, dangerous down there for sure. But in general, he's a finish or be finished type of fighter. He likes to come forward. He likes to walk you down. He'll throw a lot into his punches. He is an explosive striker. He has legitimate power. Starting to bring a little bit more IQ to his game, a little bit more patience to his game, a little bit more setups in his game, but still very much a finish or be finished type of fighter. I mentioned Tanner Boser finally coming down to light heavyweight for this fight. He was never the biggest heavyweight. In fact, he competed at 230 in his last fight. So, I mean, that's going to leave a few variables, right? Stylistically, I think they're both going to get what they want. Cutelaba is going to be the aggressor. Boser is going to be able to fight from the outside. I think that's where both fighters prefer to operate offensively. I think Boser's striking will be more effective, but Cutelaba's pressure could be a factor here. Coming down in weight, Zahn, I know you always mention it, the chin doesn't always carry over. But with Tanner Boser, again, competing as a heavyweight, competing as somebody who was facing people 30 pounds heavier than he was, and 9 losses on top of that, only one of those losses have been via KO TKO. The other 8 specifically have been via decision. So it's not like he's not like he's someone who's getting finished, right? Pretty impressive durability as a heavyweight. And that tells you that his chin should be good. Of course, it has the question of, will it be good with less weight? Both guys have knockout power, whereas Boser's chin has been reliable. Ion Cutelaba's chin has not. Yes, only 3 of 9 losses via KO TKO, which is a decent amount, but his chin in general just hasn't looked reliable. He gets wobbled, he gets hurt. Again, finish or be finished type of fighter. In a striking match, I barely like Boser more than Cutelaba, just being more effective. Cutelaba has that equalizer though, right? He has the huge advantage with the wrestling, and he is going to attempt it. But with Cutelaba, again, the IQ, the chin, it hasn't been impressive enough for me to want to pick him here. I can potentially see a similar fight as his last fight versus Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Look good in the first, get touched in the second, right? Maybe you're looking at a Tanner Boser uppercut as opposed to a Kennedy and Nzechukwu jumping knee. I think Boser catches him ultimately at some point, and I think he has the chin. I think Boser has the chin to survive the early threat from Cutelaba, to even give up that first round if Cutelaba looks amazing with takedowns. But again, that second round, that fighting from the outside, that not fully trusting Cutelaba's IQ and decision-making ability, and Boser, being the bigger guy, at least historically, I think Boser's going to find a moment where he catches him and breaks his way or thinks he's breaking his way into the light heavyweight division, because I really don't think he's that serious of a contender. But I think he gets it done here, just by being the smarter fighter and finding that moment. Tanner Boser is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this might be a good cut for Tanner. Remember, he was 230 in his last fight. So cutting 25 pounds might be a good thing. He's going to have to do a lot of cardio in training. He's going to have to do a lot of running. That should benefit him. I think he's going to come in really good shape in this fight. And he's going to have the striking. He's going to have the power advantage, I think, on the feet. He has fast hands, which doesn't really get mentioned a lot. Like, his hands are pretty quick for a heavyweight. And he is able to throw combos at certain points. Cutelaba, for me, is a first round or bust type of guy. He's going to have the wrestling advantage in this fight. But I just think if he took this a bit more serious, this guy could have been a much better fighter. He doesn't have the best IQ. This fight, he needs to use that wrestling. If he's smart, he go wrestling. He prepares cardio to go wrestling for 3 rounds. But I just don't think his cardio is that good. He's going to look good the first round, but as the fight goes on, if Bozer's still around, Bozer should do enough to get the win. My concerns with Bozer is his takedown defense. It's not great, and his get-up game is not great as well. He doesn't really show like he trains much jiu-jitsu. He doesn't know what to do when it's like if he gets taken down, that's it for the round unless the ref stands him back up. So that's my concern with Bozer, but I don't trust Cutelaba after that first round. So I got to go with Tanner Bozer. And I think he has a chance in this spot, but this is a tough fight that literally for me is 50-50. Can go either way.
All right, fight number 4, Dustin Jacoby, Azamat Murzakanov. Jacoby had that split decision loss to Khalil Roundtree back in October. Most people had Jacoby winning that one for what it's worth. He's a methodical striker, crafty switch stance, trains with Gutierrez. So a lot of the things that I said about Gutierrez, I'm going to say about Dustin Jacoby as well. Pretty good boxer, pretty good kickboxer. He's going to chip away with those kicks, great accuracy with his hands and good usage of the jab. And that he's very patient. Good movement, good counter punching as well. His calf kick, has given some of his opponents problems, and good power or sneaky power, right? 11 of his 18 wins via KO, TKO, and it's usually from accuracy, accumulation, speed, as opposed to brute force or sort of touch of death type of power. For Azamat Murzakanov, he beat Devin Clark back in August to remain undefeated at 12-0. He's a southpaw. He's light on the feet, a lot of in and out movement, and he's a good counter puncher. He picks his spots well. He has good power, likes that overhand left hook. 75% of his wins have been via KO, TKO. Not looking to land takedowns, but he is Russian, right? Has a ground IQ, solid clinch as well. I think this is a dangerous fight if you are Dustin Jacoby. I mean, we see him here as a decent favorite in this fight. I think almost by default, there's definitely value on Murzakanov as the undefeated underdog with power. Both of these guys are high IQ strikers, but I like Jacoby, right? I like Jacoby because he's quicker, he's more active. I think he can be the more effective striker throughout the fight. Murzakanov is the bigger power threat, but I think Jacoby will be able to keep himself safe. Don't want to bet on this one. I don't want to get caught by this one. In fact, from a betting perspective, I would consider dog or pass. But from a pick perspective, I'm going to pick Dustin Jacoby to get it done.
Yeah, I just think Dustin Jacoby is going to be leading the fight. He's going to be winning the fight. Now, Azamat at any point can end the fight. That's the thing. But if he does end the fight at that point, prior to the ending, I think just Dustin Jacoby is going to be winning the fight up until that point. Azamat has really good boxing, really sneaky boxing. He could cause some problems in this division. If he wins this fight, it's going to be interesting to see what he does afterwards, because this guy has a really good left hand, really good counters, and he has that power. He has that heart as well to come back to win a fight in the 3rd round, a fight he's losing. So he definitely has the X factor. He's from Russia. He has that heavy left hand. Dustin Jacoby kind of touches you he touches you, right? Leg kick, body kick, punching, jab, straights. He's very technical in what he does. There's a method to his madness. He's really good at it. He's a former kickboxer as well. In Glory, he did pretty good there. In this fight, he's going to have the more diverse tools. He's going to have the kicks. He's going to have the knees, the elbows. Azamat's going to come in with a boxing approach. So it's going to be a boxer versus a kickboxer. I don't think Azamat's going to use the wrestling. If he does, I think Jacoby should be a vet enough to keep it on the feet. He should be okay to get back up if he does get taken down. And Jacoby's going to be the bigger guy. So if this is a striking match, I've seen Azamat susceptible to leg kicks. And that's one of Dustin Jacoby's main weapons. One of the best things he's good at are those leg kicks. Jacoby also always has his hands up, or he has them pretty close up. So he's pretty decent defensively with those small UFC gloves. I got to go with Dustin, man. Just having more tools in this fight. Again, I think he should be winning the fight the majority, unless Azamat eventually lands something. So I can't really put a bet on a puncher's chance because I give Azamat a solid chance, but I think he has to knock out Jacoby, because if he doesn't knock him out, Jacoby as well, I think, has the better cardio. I think Jacoby should win the third round, and I think Jacoby could get one of the first 2 rounds. So I got to go Jacoby in this spot.
All right, let's talk co-main event. We have Edson Barbosa taking on Billy Quarantillo. Barbosa 2-fight losing streak. He's 37 years old at this point. Over a year since his last fight. He lost to Bryce Mitchell at that time. We know he's always going to be dangerous on the feet. He's as pure of a kickboxer as it gets. Good fakes and feints, good movement, has the nasty kicks, good power as well, especially in this weight class. Generally good takedown defense. Respectable 75% on paper, but it is worth noting that Bryce Mitchell took him down four times in their last fight. Of course, Bryce Mitchell really good at landing takedowns, but still something to keep note of. Billy Q beat Alex Hernandez back in December. He has serviceable MMA stand-up. He pushes a high constant pace throughout the fight. He's going to throw a lot into his strikes. He's going to make it scrappy. The striking technique is improving over his last few fights. Takedowns are an active part of his game as well, though the numbers aren't amazing. 1.5 per, just 24% on the accuracy side of things. Good grappling to go along with it. Good top control to go along with it. Good ground and pound to go along with it. He doesn't have the best takedown defense, but I don't think that's going to matter in this fight. Above all, pretty tough, right? He can give a lot. He can take a lot. He'll keep coming. He really tough. One of those guys that you're gonna have to stay sharp for the entire fight against. And I think there's valid reasons to like Billy Quarantillo as the favorite here. You think about his work rate, his pace, his pressure, the takedown potential. But I think this can be a trap fight in a lot of ways. And Edson's cardio ultimately is what's going to matter here. His takedown defense is going to matter here as well. Regardless of pace, I think that Barbosa is going to be a much higher level striker. Quarantillo's takedown accuracy is only 24%, so I don't really see Barbosa being dominated by takedowns like he was in his last fight versus Bryce Mitchell. And I'm kind of getting the feeling, I know it's going to be thematic for the year, but I'm getting a bit of the feeling that this could be one of those fights where levels are shown, right? Like Casey O'Neill versus Jennifer Maia, like Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. This could be one of those fights. I think Edson could be worth a dog call here to avoid a 3-fight losing streak in what's ultimately a step down in competition from what he's used to. I think his striking can be effective. And I mean, if he can put on sort of one of those vintage performances in front of an audience, I think he has the ability to really piece up Billy Quarantillo while keeping the fight standing. So I'm going to make that dog call again. I think this could be one of those fights. Edson Barbosa as the underdog is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a great fight. This is a fight for the fans. Billy Q, man, he's dangerous, man. This guy has good cardio, puts on a pace, not scared to get hit, not scared to give one to take one, or take one to give one. And in this fight, he's gonna have the wrestling advantage. He's gonna have the age advantage as well. Barbosa, this guy's the better striker, the really good kicks. It depends if Barbosa can land those kicks early on Quarantillo. Quarantillo, we've seen him kind of get pieced up in his last fight against Hernandez. It's Anthony Hernandez. What's his name?
Alexander.
Alex Hernandez. We saw him kind of get pieced up in that first round, and also the first half of the second round he was losing. But then Hernandez, who's known for gassing, gassed, and then Quarantillo looked really good, got the finish in that fight. But you got to watch that first round. He was getting pieced up, and that's Hernandez. Barbosa's a far different beast. Those leg kicks, man. I keep talking about him, but Quarantillo doesn't have the leg kicks Edson has. That's a big advantage Barbosa has. He's gonna be the taller guy. He's gonna have the reach advantage as well. and he's going to also have those deadly, deadly leg kicks. And when you look at who they fought, obviously Barbosa has fought the better guys. But when you look at fights like Barbosa versus Ige, Barbosa got robbed in that fight. Barbosa versus Felder, Barbosa got robbed in that fight as well. So his record should be better. And like those are two wins. If you go on MMA decisions, 80 to 90% of the media is scoring those two fights for Barbosa. I just think there's levels to the striking. I think if this is a clean fight, Barbosa should get this done. His cardio has held up in the past. He should be able to go the 3 rounds no problem. And you look at Billy Q, as good as his cardio is, he's known for that. In his fight against Burgos in the late second, third round, he was gasping. He was like, I never seen him that tired in that fight. It may be because he took a lot of damage from Burgos during the fight, but he was tired. So as good as his cardio is, I have seen him severely gassed in a fight, and that was against Shane Burgos, high paced. He took a lot of damage. Barbosa beat Burgos, but MMA math doesn't work. But I think Barbosa can keep it on the feet, stop the takedowns, and I think he's the better striker. I think he's going to be able to hurt Billy Q and get the win here.
And finally, let's look at our main event. We're looking at a good one here in the featherweight division, Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. Holloway, of course, had that UD loss to Alexander Volkanovski back in July. We know his striking prowess at this point, definitely one of the best pure strikers in the UFC. Good pace, good control of the octagon, good complete striking, high IQ. Again, just a complete striker. Expect him also to keep it on the feet. Has really good takedown defense at 84% to go along with it. He even snuck in 3 takedowns of his own against his fight 2 fights ago against Yair Rodriguez, but don't really expect that to be an active part of his game. Arnold Allen, 12-fight winning streak after that knee injury win in his October main event versus Calvin Kattar. He's southpaw on the feet. He has good overall stand-up, good overall movement, a good jab, especially good combinations, and really explosive. Good MMA striking in general. He trains with Leon Edwards and those guys. He's patient on the feet. He picks his spots well. And again, when he finds that moment, he can be really powerful, really explosive, and really good as a counterpuncher. He's also well-rounded. He can go for those takedowns. We see the numbers there at almost 1.5 per fight at 50% accuracy. I don't think that part of the game will matter. Again, I think Holloway's takedown defense is too good from that perspective. So I think this one stays on the feet. I wasn't fully sold on Arnold Allen up until maybe 2 fights ago with what he did to Dan Hooker. Legitimate contender. I think he deserves to be getting these high-profile fights. But I think Max is a little too good here. For what Allen was doing to Dan Hooker, he wasn't necessarily doing the same thing to Calvin Kattar before the injury. Was he winning the fight? I mean, it was about a round and a half. Was he winning the fight? I guess. Yes, he was. Actually, no, it's clear he was. But he wasn't schooling him, right? The higher level Calvin Kattar was definitely showing up to be a challenge, right? Or showing up to be a tough test, if nothing else. And we can't forget, although Volkanovski makes Holloway look human, Max is still just 31 years old. I don't think he's in that decline territory yet, despite, having 30 professional fights. You look at his last 2 wins, current intern champ, Yair Rodriguez, and then complete domination over a Calvin Kattar type of fighter, where he landed, of course, over 400 strikes. Max still has it, if you ask me. I think Arnold Allen, not quite there yet, right? I think Max gets it done. I think Max gets it done with more active striking, with showing the levels to the striking in these sort of main event type of environment, keeping it on the feet with good takedown defense as well. Allen, of course, can have powerful moments in the fight, but I think Holloway is going to have more consistent moments with that pace and with that, prowess striking wise that he has. Holloway is going to be my pick. I think, again, I think he's He's not at that decline stage yet. So although Arnold Allen is rising to the top, Max Holloway is still at the top. And I think Max Holloway is going to pull out the W and get the decision in his name.
Yeah, this is a great fight, man. Arnold Allen, these are some good odds you're getting for Max Holloway. Arnold Allen looks the part, man. He has the boxing, he has the kickboxing, he has the wrestling. He's big, he's strong, he has power, he has knockout power. He could win this fight if he lands. But Max has faced heavy punchers. He's fought Jose Aldo, he's fought Dustin Poirier, and these guys gave him. He took big shots from these guys, and none of these guys could put him down. And I'm not even sure. I don't think he's been knocked. He's never been knocked. I don't even think he's been knocked out in any of his fights. So this guy is hard to put away, and I think that's the way Arnold Allen needs to win the fight. When you look at Arnold Allen, he looked really good against Dan Hooker, but Hooker is slowing down, and you can't deny that. And when you watch that fight, an important fight to watch is against a fighter that, see, we would have got it from Calvin Qatar if that fight went on, but the fight lasted only 2 rounds. But the fight against Sodiq Yusuff, that's a guy that can bring it. That's a guy that can strike just as good as Arnold Allen. He was winning some of the rounds. He was winning the rounds, and then Arnold would have the big moment. He would knock down or he would drop Sodiq, and he would steal that round. Kind of like what happened to Rob Font against Marlon Vera, where he was winning the round, and then one big shot for Marlon put him down, gave Marlon the round. Same thing happened in that fight. Sodiq was looking good in some. He looked good in 2 of the rounds, but in those rounds, he got dropped. But he looked beatable in that fight, Arnold Allen, and that was the most dangerous guy that he's really fought on his record. And now when you see Max Holloway, and also that fight with he slows down in the 3rd round. Some fighters are able to get a win on the judges' scorecard against Arnold Allen in that 3rd round. So that's something you got to look at. Sodiq won that 3rd round. Nick Lentz on one of the judges' scorecard won the 3rd round as well. So he slows down as the fight goes. And Max Holloway, that's when he's turning it up. Max Holloway makes big adjustments in fights, especially when it comes to the striking. He's one of those guys with really high IQ when it comes to striking. I can see Arnold Allen looking good first 2 rounds, but I don't see him keeping up with the pace, man. I think Holloway is going to run away with it. I think Holloway could win all the rounds, but Arnold is dangerous early. But as the fight goes on, Max is going to put on a pace, and he's going to win this fight. He's going to beat Arnold Allen in the striking in this fight. So I'm going to go Max Holloway here to get it done.
All right, let's take it to Vegas. Let's consider an underdog pick. Let's consider some parlay picks as well. I will read off the underdogs, and there are a lot of viable ones on this card, in my opinion. Joselyne Edwards is an underdog versus Lucie Pudilová. Aaron Phillips is an underdog. Denise Gomes is an underdog. Landon Vannata is an underdog. Piera Rodriguez, Ed Herman, Brandon Royval, TJ Brown, Clay Guida, Pedro Munhoz, Tanner Boser, Azamat Murzakanov, Edson Barbosa, and Arnold Allen.
I like Piera Rodriguez.
Piera Rodriguez, so even money underdog there at a 2.0. I think that's a good one as well. My underdog pick, I'm going with TJ Brown. I think he has a good shot at getting it done. I think Algeo's a little overpriced on this one. And in terms of looking at some parlay picks, who are you taking a look at?
I'm looking at, let me see here. Okay, I'm going to look at, I got it. Chris Gutierrez, Rafa Garcia, and it's either Matheus Nicolau or Dustin Jacoby. I'm going to go with Matheus Nicolau.
All right, those 3 fights, triple up, 3.04. That means $100 will return $304, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $761. I'm gonna say this. Two of my fights are the exact same, Chris Gutierrez, Rafa Garcia as well. I'm having a hard time picking a third one. But who you mentioned is who I was looking at, right? I'm looking at Nicolau. I'm looking at Jacoby. I'm potentially looking at Max Holloway as well, as a viable third option. I think for the channel, I'm gonna dial it back and I'm gonna leave it at just the two fights. I think Chris Gutierrez and Rafa Garcia, I think we both can agree that those are probably the two most comfortable fights on the card. At least from what we anticipate, that'll be a double up. If you want to get that third fight on there, definitely, take a look at some of the fighters that Zahn has mentioned, or potentially consider Max Holloway. But again, just for the channel, I'm going to leave it at the two picks. I'm going to leave it at Rafa Garcia and Chris Gutierrez. Those two can still get you a double up, and a double up is still a good thing. $100 in this case at 2.06 will return $206. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 516. So let's officially sign off on that note. This has been UFC Fight Night, Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen, full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. If you have not done so already, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel as well here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Let us know how you feel about our picks. Let us know your underdog of the night, your parlays of the night. And if you want additional breakdowns and additional insights on these fights, let that be known in the comments. And again, we'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you. But officially signing off, UFC Fight Night, Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen, full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn. I go by Harris. As usual, let's get this money.
Let's get it.